All right, you guys, let me know if you can hear me because I'm having big time computer problems. If anybody's still there, I'm afraid to open up any other windows. So just let me know if you guys can see or hear me because I'm afraid to check YouTube because I froze. Okay. I know it's not a great day, the day before Thanksgiving, to be asking people to stop by. So I appreciate you guys coming in. And if you have questions, let me know because I'll stop whatever I'm talking about. I know there are people who are strictly on YouTube and are not paying attention to Twitter, which I think is a mistake, but whatever, people don't want to go on Twitter. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about or tweet about, some folks will not know what's going on. So I'm going to be repetitive unless you guys ask questions. Okay, good. I am pretty sure I am good there. So basically, I'm just going to start with the Gillibrand Amendment, which came out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting that language. We had the Congressman Gallego from Arizona. He put some language in, which was great, had health-related effects, talked about crash retrievals, not in those words, but talking about exploiting UAP, which is basically, as Lou explained, crash retrievals. And we know that Eric Davis briefed the Senate Select Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee, among other DoD agencies. That was in 2020 and 2019. And so Senator Gillibrand is on both of those committees. So whether she or her staffer heard that briefing, I don't know. But that language is still in there as of now. You're not seeing at all, Michael? You just hear? Tell me if you guys can't see me. Tell me because I have visuals that I was going to use, but I can. I'll just go with it. I know there's another. I know the unidentified celebrity review is starting at 4 Pacific, so I'm not sure if they're going to have Lou or Melon on. I don't know. But if I don't know why you wouldn't be seeing me. So anyway, I'll keep going. So anyway, her language came out of nowhere, so it was exciting. She has Senator Lindsey Graham. Okay, good. You guys can, most of you can see me. So we had Lindsey Graham, a Republican, Roy Blunt, a Republican, Marco Rubio, a Republican, and Martin Heinrich, a Democrat. They all supported it. And starting out before that, we had the event at the National Cathedral where the Director of National Intelligence said, there's always the question, is there something else that we simply do not understand that might come extraterrestrial? She really hesitated to say that word. Seemed like she was nervous. So that was then. So we had that. Recently, Lou's been talking about something being imminent, but I think people are jumping the gun thinking that full disclosure is imminent, which it is not. It's imminent that the conversation is going to go to the next level, and you're seeing it with all the members of Congress getting involved, whatever their reasons. I know Mellon said the other day he focused strictly on national security and safety for our aviators, which is great. But once we get into this, they'll see, I'm sure, it's more than just that, and I'm sure they know it's more than just that. Going back to that, somebody the other day on Twitter said that they didn't name names, but they said people are content with what's going on and, saying, they really don't know what's going on. Well, it's not that I'm content. It's just that I do think there are certain people that know a lot more. And then another level below that or above that know a lot more than those folks. But I don't think anything we say is going to change that right now. I don't think our constituency is large enough. Earlier today, Douglas Dean Johnson, who's great on these updates with Congress, he's like, you should not call your Congress member. If you're not from that state, don't call them. And he's like, you don't want to overwhelm them. But I don't think there's enough of us. And by the way, you can use that link. I'll put it here too. If you want to call in, you don't have to you could do visual too, audio instead of visual if you don't want to show your face. But I don't think we're enough of a constituency to make that much of a difference where we're clogging up their phone lines. And I'm going to add Omega Point to the stream. Welcome. Thank you for calling in.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Have you ever been? Have you ever called in at all?
I think I have. I think actually your first or second stream I called in. Um, yeah, I think it's been a while though. It's been a bit. You keeping
Thank
them
you. So what do you,
honest?
I am trying to keep myself honest and keeping my computer from not crashing and freezing up. There's so many different opinions, and hi to everybody in the chat. Thanks for being here. There's a lot of opinions. I mean, last night we saw Douglas Dean Johnson, and you, which I missed, jumped in and said, "Don't get excited." I'm not sure if you guys would have, if you guys didn't chime in. I'm not sure if I would have realized there was something going on, allegedly going on by the Pentagon. But you guys did, and there were other people that said, "No, this is a good thing." And then Lou jumped in with Mellon. They both are like, "No, this is a basically." Not quoting them, but it's a power grab. So do you still, there's still people online saying it's not as bad as you see, as you think it is. Brian Bender was saying that he spoke with Gallego earlier and they're just working out things, told me to calm down, which I'm calm. I am calm. So
Yeah.
what's your take on the last couple of days, last night and today?
Well, it feels like it's the bare minimum. It feels like it's an attempt to certainly the timing that it's an attempt to undercut some of this legislation that has more teeth, right? We've heard that phrase a couple of times now. I think even including from Bender talking to Gallego, and you know when I first read that that release, I was looking at it and I kept on looking at it as in terms of what's in it for me. I'm selfish, right? So I'm looking at it and saying, okay, is there anything in here that excites me? Right. So I'm going through it and I'm like, okay, there's going to be some interagency collaboration. That's great. That's already supposed to be happening, but obviously there are issues with that. And I kept on looking for the reporting. Are there going to be any reporting requirements? And I got through to the end of it and I didn't see any reporting requirements. And so that was my first red flag where I said, okay, this doesn't look right. This doesn't seem like this is any better than UAPTF. So I read it through a second time and I came away almost more discouraged because I then realized that the purview, the scope of this seems to be even narrower, right? We're talking about only monitoring, only examining cases that are in special use airspace, right? And
Right.
that seems to be, I would have to go back and look, and I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments, but that seems to be even more narrow than what UAPTF had, right? Because now we're not even talking about aerospace, we're just talking about airborne objects. So that seems to me like that takes USOs off the table, that takes anything that's in orbit, right, off the table. And so it just seems like it's really narrow in scope. And it seems like it's maybe an attempt to give some more conservative minded members on Congress. And I don't mean conservative like on the right. I just mean members who don't want to rock the boat and don't want to be associated with this topic. It gives them cover to say, well, I don't really need to be vocal advocating for this because it's already being handled. You know, so why would I vote for this, right? And why would I sponsor this? So
if
that
this
was
was
my
like,
read.
and that I see it the same way after seeing it and reading other people's takes on it, especially Lou, which I'll get to. But if this was 2 or 3, say this was 2016 and this popped out of nowhere, we would all be like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" But Senator Gillibrand and Gallego, they have our expectations now up pretty high as far as going out and investigating reports. And I'll just read, this is the DOD's announcement that came yesterday. I think it was, I don't know if it was late last night, but it came the latter part of yesterday, I think. And it says today, Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks wanted to establish the Office of the USDI, the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group. And it's just the AOIMSG as the successor to the U.S. Navy's UAP task force. But yeah, as you said, the specific, it would only look into interest related objects in the special use airspace. So it's limited, and I won't go through all the language, but it's very, very basic. And
You know, another side effect of that is if you're only looking at cases that are in special use airspace, then how much of that is going to be available at the unclassified level? Like, let's say, because I know at the end of that, it
it's a
says
great
that they're
point.
going to come out with more, details later. And let's say there are some reporting requirements later. How are you going to be giving any sort of detailed information or any information data that's useful to us if you're only looking at cases that are in SUAs, I guess is the term that they're using. It seems like that it's a way to address the most obvious issues, right? The most obvious, what we would call levers, right? I think most of us, we are concerned with national security and we are concerned with flight safety. But I think for most of us, if we're being honest, those are more like levers. That's just kind of getting our foot in the door to really get to some of the juicy stuff that we want to know about, right? We want to know about this other basket. And I think that the more and more you look at it, it just seems like it's not, it certainly isn't going to be a win for transparency if this is the only thing we're getting moving forward. It seems
No,
almost like a step backward, to be honest.
no, and I totally agree. It's just what you said. It's just the foot in the door, national security, flight safety. We all know that's not what we're dealing with, but if that's what it takes to get us in the door, that's fine. Here's Lou's response, his tweets, which I broke down into. It said, important update before anyone gets to, and this was last night, before anybody gets too excited about the recent Pentagon announcement of a new UAP group, please consider the following. USDI is, and that's the group basically that would have control of this. USDI is, if the Pentagon gets its way, USDI is precisely the same organization that has underplayed and tried to kill the UAP effort for years. USDI is an oversight organization and non-operational. Nowhere is there a requirement to provide unclassified findings to Congress or work with our international partners. Given that elements still exist in the Pentagon who are actively underplaying the significance of this topic, this is akin to giving an alcoholic the key and control to the liquor cabinet. If you want to maintain UAP UFO secrecy, this is exactly how you do it. This is a direct and blatant attempt to circumvent and undermine the Senate. And then he lists Gillibrand, Rubio, Gallego, Heinrich, Burchett, and others. He says, please, please, please contact your representatives and let them know this is unacceptable and not in the best interest of the American people. The USDI is the one single office that has continuously lied about this topic and persecuted whistleblowers, which is really strong language from Lou. So I was glad to see him coming out so strong. And then I got a message from a source saying the same group that's trying to do this are the same ones who have basically been trying to control this for a long time. Fundamental Christians, people call them the Collins elite,
Right.
call them whatever you want, but they don't want to study this because they believe it's demonic. And that
Yeah.
source is really good. It's a really good source. And I know people want names, and that may come. And I'm a little hesitant when you get names because, you know, how people can get names and people harass them. But if these folks are still doing it after all these years, I mean, that's been going on forever. Since the remote viewing program, you've had that kind of pushback from people, religious folks who are just like, no, you do not look into this. It's demonic. And one guy told John Alexander, that's something you learn about when you die.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also important to point out, I think it's important to point out that I don't see that Lou and Mellon are, just one of a few people that are pushing this forward. I see them as the tip of the iceberg. And so I think, yes, we do have this group, the Collins elite, that are, who knows, I doubt that they have like an organized name at a club, in a clubhouse or something like that. But, this group of people that's kind of scattered that are like-minded, trying to push back on greater transparency or any sort of research into this field. I think that there's also been quite a few hints dropped that Lou and Chris, and I think, Simivan and possibly even a few others, they are right working with a group or for a group, right, that is pushing for transparency, that are trying to roll out, right, disclosure in a way that is careful and cautious, right, and is trying to move the ball forward, right? We've heard Lou talk about turning the temperature up and turning the temperature down and so on and so forth. I don't think
Right.
you can make a statement like that if you're just one of 2 or 3 people. So I see them as the tip of the iceberg. And I do think that, yes, there are people at high levels that are placed throughout the IC and throughout government that are probably, affiliated with the Collins Elite, but there's probably also people that are placed at high levels that are affiliated with Lou and Chris and their efforts. And so I think that it's possible that this group could start throwing their weight around a little bit more, especially as we start to get up against this legislation that seems to be a really important inflection point, right, where things could go really well or things could go really not well. And so I think that Lou's trying to. I think it's possible that names could come out, right? And
he's mentioned it before. He's come close before, and he's been like, "No, I'm not going to do it." But there
right.
are names that have come out. There are names that have come out, but not. I don't know if they're part of the same group, but 2 names that came out, and I'm not going to say them yet, but they were part of what killed OSAP. And the person who said it said it's time to focus on these folks because they did everything they could to kill OSAP, and they won. They won. I mean, it died 19 years ago, no, 11 years ago. It died in 2010. So it's 11 years we haven't had. We've missed out on 11 years, and there's really nothing we can do about it now, but I try not to think about that. 11 lost years we could have been studying at an OSAP level, trying to figure out. And that's when George Knapp was always saying, what could we have learned if we had studied this for 11 years straight, Brian Bender, this is what he said in multiple tweets. And Douglas Dean Johnson put this together. He said, I spoke to Ruben Gallego this morning about the memo last night from Department of Secretary of Defense, Deputy Secretary of Defense memo creating a new Pentagon office to study UAPs. Gallego maintains it is a sign. We lost Omega. Gallego maintains it as a sign that the issue is being taken more seriously, but it does not obviate the need for legislation to provide more authorities and resources and direction for the government to actively collect and analyze these reports. I'm going to add Omega back in.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Sorry.
No problem. He said he spoke to Senator Gillibrand this morning about their proposals in the House and Senate versions of the National Defense Authorization Act, and they agreed to work together to get some form of their legislation into the final bill in December. He highlighted that her amendment has more teeth, as you said, including when it comes to access to resources to do the job, and he supports that. So yeah, that's great. I'm not sure. Do those folks who are trying, assuming this really is a power grab, and there are people who disagree with that, but if it is, do they have enough power to stop this is the question. And for people who have not been paying attention, basically they'll have funding. They'll be able to go out, investigate cases. And if that happens, they're going to run across people who have been injured by these things, whatever they are. If you want to make the argument that they're black technology, like some people do, whatever, people are injured by these. And if they start investigating, they're going to start getting into high strangeness because that just goes along with that. That's why I have a problem when people say, and there's some smart people who think that some of this is black technology. That's fine, but maybe the injuries. But then you start talking about the case in Bend, Oregon, where the biotechnologist, they have these two orbs come into the car. He gets cancer. I'm like, all right, black technology. They've mastered orbs. But then she goes home to the East Coast and she starts having poltergeist activity. It forces her roommate to leave. Do we have that technology? Are we doing that? I have a hard time believing that. I mean, I'm open-minded, but I have a hard time believing we've mastered that and we're following people home to cause poltergeist activity in their apartment. Yeah.
And just to quickly, if I cut out or something like that, I guess I'll just bail. I'm out in the country, so my internet is a little. It's Thanksgiving break, right? So I'm not at home. So
No
If my
problem.
internet cuts out, then I'll just pop in the chat as I can, the live chat. I've always thought it was a mixed bag. I think there are some technologies that it seems like it would be, possible that maybe we've reverse engineered and made some progress on. But things like you said, like orbs, I think that's an area where it's really difficult for me to imagine that we're able to control like self-organizing plasmas, right? That's that whole Sapphire project.
Right.
Rabbit hole you could go down. But yeah, I think that it's both ways. I think that there are some people that say that the entire UFO narrative, the lore, is used by the intelligence community to hide Black Project technology. And then there are people on the other side who say that no, what they want you to believe that it's all black budget technology. They don't want you to. And here's what I say to that. I think that the answer is that both of those people are truthful, right? They're both right. That there are some aspects of the government people who want to be able to use the lore to their advantage to hide their black budget program, and then there are people who want to use the specter of black budget program secrecy to hide the fact that they are actually working on UFO projects, right, or UAP, at least trying to understand them. So I think that you've got different groups in the government. They all have different missions. And they're all working on different technologies and trying to understand different things. I think that this particular power grab, if you will, Lou seems to be suggesting, right, or not just suggesting, he's just outright stating that this is USDI, and it seems like there is a connection to this, this conservative religious group, right? That's historically been a part of this. Since that I feel like that's been around for a long time. I can't remember the first time I heard that, but I feel like it was pretty early on that we heard rumors of this group. And so I'm really interested to see. What happens with the face of our group, right? Like we have a face, right, and his name is Lou Elizondo of this. That's kind of the tip of the spear, the tip of the iceberg. Does USDI itself become the face, right, of this other group? That's what I'm interested to find out. Or is there going to be someone, one or two people that we can kind of, rally around, not to do anything, not advocating for any sort of doxing or anything like that, but just somebody to know that we can argue against this person, right? Because it seems almost like it's almost like not fighting fair, right? To have these public facing individuals on our end that are working towards greater transparency. And yet these other groups that are embedded within the IC, it's just, alphabet soup, right? You're arguing against thin air. So I think we're definitely in the middle of some sort of intelligence war. Like I said before, some sort of inflection point. I'm just really interested to see where it goes from here. I sent my emails. I sent 2 emails to my representatives. I'm sure some staffer will look at it and giggle and send me some sort of blanket form response, right? Boilerplate response, which is fine.
Some do. Some do, some don't. I have a friend who got two form letters and he was not happy. But then somebody got something from Senator Feinstein's office and it was specific. I don't know if it's a form letter for UAP, but at least it addressed it. When I called Heinrich's office there, I said, what's the best way to do it? I said, is a letter, email, phone call? He goes, that's a good question. He goes, you just want to leave a comment, just leave it now, which I did. So yeah, I'm sure letters are a little more powerful than phone calls.
Do you know what can you kind of, you might have already done this. So we've got the Gillibrand Rubio Amendment, and then you've got Gallego's amendment. Gallego's amendment has been passed, correct? So that was a while back. Gallego's amendment, I think, was like in September. It was passed.
I think so.
And so now, what's the move? Is the move that do you know? Are they are they going to try and move forward with the Gillibrand Amendment, or are they trying to move forward with some other amendment that uses the same language? Have you seen any stories about that, or what? Because I know basically what I'm trying to understand is Bender was communicating with Gallego, right? And Gallego said he was in favor of something with more teeth. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, if his amendment already passed, does he have some other kind of amendment that's up that that's going to be in addition to what he already passed? I'm just a little confused by that.
So
I'm sure I'm not the only one.
I'm going to read different takes from Dean, because I think Dean is a lobbyist in Washington, so he knows.
Oh wow.
He knows how all this stuff works. Let me
Yeah.
Let me get rid of that, and I will add this, and I'll just read some of his tweets because I know he's covered this. He said, so he's quoting from the War Zone article, which I have not read. He said, they say narrowing the scope of their activities to incidents in the SUA. That's what we already talked about. So let me just find here's one thing he said. He encourages everybody to call your two U.S. senators and the representatives in the House. And he says, even if they're not on the committees that control the NDAA, members of Congress talk to each other. So it helps to get a positive buzz going. And he lists the numbers you can call, and then you just reference your zip code and ask for the two senators or your state. They'll put you in contact. Also, there are websites you can do that. You can find their numbers online. But Dean did say, he did talk about what you're asking, how this works, and Bender talked about it. Basically, they have to come together and work on what language is going to be in the Senate version. And I was a little upset, not upset, I was worried. They talked about, some of the language, they got to figure out which language is going to make it in there. And I'm like, some of it, I was hoping for all of it. So obviously my expectations were too high. And Dean's telling people, and I need to find where that happened, where Bender responded.
So it just occurred to me that it might be that because Gallego was able to pass that initial amendment, and I believe he's on the relevant committees, that it's just working with him to get his sponsorship, because I don't believe he's co-sponsoring this amendment yet. And so it may just be collaborating with him to make sure that going forward, they're on the same page and it doesn't look like they have two separate dissonant efforts, right. Even if he doesn't have a current amendment that he's trying to get passed.
And the language is similar. I mean, on some of the stuff it's similar, but yeah, I would hope that I don't know if they have to really compromise. I don't know if we have not seen any pushback publicly as far as we know with that language. So I don't know if there's opposition to it.
Yeah, I really like what Tom Rogan said at the end of his article, which was great. If you haven't seen it, it's a really quick, short,
is it today?
Snappy analysis. Yeah, Tom Rogan's article today on about the DoD announcement. Yeah, it's great. At the end, he says, basically, he recommends that everybody should just ignore the fact that this even happened and just move forward with the Gillibrand Rubio amendment, which I think is, really easy to understand, because this gets us into the weeds really quickly.
I'll read it real quick. Anytime you need to go, just let me know. It says, adopting Sun Tzu's mantra that victorious warriors win first and then go to war, the Defense Department has launched a preemptive strike on Congress, specifically a strike against congressional efforts to ramp up government research on UFOs, what government refers to as UAP. On Tuesday, Kathleen Hicks announced the formation of a group to lead the government's UFO investigations, attesting to the Pentagon's affinity for absurd acronyms. The group will be called OAIMSG, the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group, and it will be supervised by the AOIMEXEC, or the Airborne, OSAP was hard enough. the Airborne Object Identification and Management Executive Council. Their mission is to synchronize efforts across the Pentagon and the broader U.S. government to detect, identify, and attribute objects of interest in special use airspace. This might sound like progress, Rogan says, from a department that has spent much of the post-Second World War period saying UFOs are fictional. Unfortunately, it's anything but that. In reality, this is a deliberate and calculated effort to undermine bipartisan legislation moving through Congress. That legislation centers on Senator Kirsten Gillibrand's amendment to the 22 Defense Act. Now refiled with bipartisan support, Gillibrand's amendment would significantly strengthen the government's investigation of UFOs. Most notably, the legislation would do several things the AIOMSG ignores. I won't read all of it. Basically, he's on the same team as Lou and Mellon and other folks. I'm not sure why. I mean, it seems pretty obvious that their effort would undermine Gillibrand and really make, it would be something that normally we would be excited about. Now, after Gillibrand's language came out, it's not a good thing. So I'm not really sure why people are pushing back, saying it's not that big of a deal. But I wanted to share one more thing, and feel free to chime in. Anybody, if you have any specific questions, somebody says, Gallego is part of the NDA House bill, not the Senate bill, two different bodies that need to come together. Okay. So I don't know if it really matters, even if the House passed it, because it's got to finally, like you said, it's got to come together.
Thanks for pointing that out. I feel really stupid now. That's really obvious.
Here's another thing that makes us feel stupid. They go, Schoolhouse Rock, man. How can you forget how a bill becomes a law?
Of course. To be honest with you, keeping straight who's in the House and the Senate, my brain is just not there right now. So I didn't make that distinction. So I appreciate that.
Right there with you. And speaking of people who don't think the congressional offer is a big deal, and John Greenwald says, watching the back and forth on who should control UAP research from within the U.S. government is entertaining. If you all think one side of the government will be more transparent than the other, regardless of what branch they are, you haven't been paying attention. I get the point, but at least let's have the language in there so we can go from there. If we can get that language in there, and then if it's a letdown, fine. But I mean, the comparison in language it's night and day. So obviously, we're going to push.
I think to me that tweet just completely misses the point. I don't think anybody is arguing over which branch of the IC is responsible for what, right? I think this is about the requirements, what's in the mandate. And if there's no mandate for, any sort of civilian oversight, any sort of reporting mandates, especially at the unclassified level, any sort of outside scientist input, I think that it's a step backward, not a step forward. So it just seems, I think that was just an effort on his part to be kind of contrarian, right? To say, well, you guys are over here upset about this and that, but I'm over here and I've got this other higher view that's, that understands that you can't trust the government. Well, we all believe in UFOs, right? We all understand that the government is not, trustworthy at all levels. So, but anyway, I think that it just completely misses the point.
No, I agree. And another thing I don't know if you got to see Billy Cox's article. He's underappreciated. He writes and he doesn't he doesn't promote his stuff at all. So you have to go looking or belong to his email. He'll email you when he has a new article. He pointed out that the Gillibrand, and I missed this the first time, the Gillibrand language calls for them. I'm not saying they're going to be able to do this, but it talks about trying to figure out intent of UFOs, which obviously that's the big question. So it's the language is in there. So whether obviously that's easier said than done, but we have crash retrieval language, we have health related effects, we have intent. It's a really good, great proposal that has to get passed. I hopefully they don't have to negotiate down too much where it's watered down. And I'm trying to read. I have not read Christopher Mellon's article yet. I don't know. He puts these articles out so quick. I don't know if he's able to, if he had them ready to go. He wrote, actually, it was a letter to Congressman Gallego. I need to go through. I'm not going to read it all. It's kind of boring for me just to read. And if anybody has questions, just let me know. Just ask and I'll put them up. The difference now is the elected bodies are now weighing in and haven't done that on, to any appreciable degree in the past. I mean, obviously I wasn't around in the 50s. I know when Gerald Ford was a congressman or a senator, I think congressman in Michigan, and the whole swamp gas thing took place, he wanted hearings. I don't think there were open hearings to the public, but they did discuss it, but nothing like this. I mean, it's progress. And there are still people in our community who don't think we've made any progress since 2017, which is beyond me. Hopefully some of them are coming around now. I haven't seen any of them chime in. I've seen some people get a little more open-minded about what's going on. For me, I've been at it since 96 or so, and I've never seen anything like this. Not even close.
Flex on them. Flex on them.
What was it?
I said flex on them.
Flex.
Yeah.
Well, I hate saying, I've been around since 96. Like, there's some great new people. I mean, I don't know when you got into this and started being active, but there are a lot of great new people who have entered the scene. It's great. It's not like I don't have that attitude where, well, I was here first, damn it. No, people got mad at DeLong because they're like, he didn't put in the work. I'm like, DeLong has made a big impact with what he did. I mean, I'll never get.
There's no questioning that at this point. There's no questioning that. Yeah. And I mean, you're a much better man than I, because I would absolutely gatekeep. In 20 years, I'm going to be insufferable. You better hope that disclosure has happened, because I'm going to be Jack Brewer times 1,000 on this thing. I'm going to be so pessimistic, and so it's just going to be great. And I'm going to have an email chain too that no one wants to be on. It's, I'm just going to be forwarding you all kinds of research. I'm going to be like Brewer and Sarfati mixed, like up in a blender, right? That's going to be me. And I'm just going to be shouting at the rooftops.
Get off my UFO!
Yeah.
Somebody asks, talk more about the Collins elite in this. I don't think the IG investigation is against the Collins people. I mean, Lou mentioned some of the same people that have been around for a long time. I'm not sure if they're all the Collins elite type people. And eventually those people, he said, they're starting to lose their power, but apparently not as much as we need them to lose their power, since they're making waves with this latest effort, if Lou and Mellon and Rogan and everybody else is right. So they're still there. I don't know if it's a question of, I have a list of quotes which I need to put out on my blog of people over the years who have encountered those type of folks. It goes, it's always the same thing. But my favorite one is Joe McMonagle, one of the best remote viewers ever, where he says somebody came up to him and it was some sort of hearing or private hearing. And they said, son, you're doing God's work. And then another person came up to him and said, son, you're doing the work of the devil. So it's like both sides of the coin. I don't know if it's mainstream. It's mainstream occasionally. It's not mainstream with my friends and family, because when I go on Facebook and post the Gillibrand Amendment and the articles about that, I mean, I'm from New York, and so almost all of my family is in New York. They don't respond to it at all whatsoever. They don't like it. They don't comment. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that, if they're afraid of it or they're annoyed that I don't go on Facebook, because I'm on Twitter all the time. I don't go on Facebook. I don't know. That is a little disappointing. I would think at this point where we have language in Congress, and she's somebody who has never spoken about this, although she talked about she's had other meetings. She said, I can count on one hand the times that this has come up in the past 10 years, which I would love to know. What else, what other meetings is she talking about?
Yeah, and I think the key point there is, that I think it was Pix, is maybe the poster who said that, said Pix, that the government will never willingly talk about this. And I think that's the key part. That's the key part, the willingly bit. Because if we get these mandates, this is no longer a willingly situation. And I think that, ultimately, people are going to do what they have to do by law. And so if if this is put into law, right, then it seems like there's no longer a choice. Now, I could see the IG investigation is that they're probably going to try and look for those people who have been trying to, like, if there were people who are stopping briefings from happening, right, that are stopping people who should be in the know about this information from knowing about this information for reasons, right, whatever those reasons might be, I would think that, that would be where the IG investigation would go, right, would be trying to find out, are there people who are actively thwarting this process, who are making this harder rather than easier, not because it's their job, but because they have some sort of an ulterior motive. So I don't know that there's any technical like illegality, but obviously that's probably not the way things are supposed to work.
Yeah, and
So,
I would love to get Gillibrand's reaction to what's going on. Is she? I mean, I'm sure she's aware of this. She must be aware. I don't know how important this is to her. I know it's in there. I don't know if this is a political thing for her. I don't personally care. I mean, I wish it would be a passion of hers. When you hear Heinrich talk about it, he seems a little more, I wouldn't say passionate, but he's talking about, he goes, I don't think we have this stuff. I would like to see more of that from her. I would love to get more of a feel for how she thinks about this. What does she think about the subject? I know she talks about her kids. And so I would love to see, hopefully, an extended interview with her. But overall, I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation is not something I ever thought would happen. I mean, after being in it for so long, I didn't lose interest, but I stopped following it really closely every day, looking for new information. And then DeLong came along, and that's when I started paying attention again. And now here we are talking about various senators, co-sponsoring UFO language, talking about, and I still think skinwalkers at the Pentagon is underrated. It's such a rare look at a program that I personally, and I think most people agree, you have to look at, and I'm not saying right away we have to talk to people and say, you need to talk about bipedal wolves that showed up at the DIA guy's house, and then his wife saw it, and then the kids saw it, and then the kid's friends saw it, and it spread to the neighbors, and it's an infectious agent. I don't think we need to go there right off the bat, but that's part of it. It's part of it. I mean, when people have close-up encounters with UFOs, they have this weird stuff happen. I don't know why. We could say maybe it's and Skinwalker Ranch. It's not just Skinwalker Ranch. It's whatever. It's either. Do you have any theories on that? Because I'm thinking, is it activating something in these people that they're able to sense things later on? But then you have neighbors experiencing it too. So it's like it's interesting, and it's really hard to figure out what's going on.
yeah, I mean, I think there's what's the quote? There are no haunted houses, only haunted people, right? Is that I don't remember. Someone can quickly Google that and throw it in the chat who said that. But
and by the way, if anybody in the chat sees that Lou or Melon or anybody are on the unidentified celebrity review, let me know, and I'll end this so you guys can go watch. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm a big, I'm a big subscriber to, in terms of a mechanism, and I know you've talked about this a lot, is the idea of transmogrification, right? Keel's theory of transmogrification, where basically you have these entities, right, who he calls the ultra terrestrials, right, that can basically manifest whatever they want, right, into our reality from some other reality, some other realm. My hypothetical, right, my hunch is that these are higher dimensional, right, beings that are able to do this. That's not to say that that's the only thing that's out there. As far as I don't like one size fits all answers. It seems to me that Skinwalker Ranch, that's probably what's going on. That you've got something that's mimicking, right? That's mimicking other phenomena, mimicking other beings. Putting these things together, right? You've got the whole control system hypothesis as well. As far as why they attach to people, that's $1 million question there. I don't really know. I mean, I know you've kind of gone down the rabbit hole too with some of the energy feeding kind of stuff, right? Where maybe they, once they kind of latch on to somebody, maybe they stay with them for a while. And but I don't know. That's a really good question, really, for experiencers, in my opinion. That's who I would be really interested to hear. I think with this stuff, it's really hard to analyze from the outside looking in. I think that for this kind of reality, it's something that you really have to experience, and then I think you can speak from that experience. But it's always going to be really hard to just do from a physical science perspective, explain why that happens. That's just my opinion. So that's why I really like Experiencer Group. That's a really great. They do spaces once every week or so, and you can just go in there and talk to a handful of experiencers, about things that they have in common, things that they, their theories. And I think that's really, really important. And bringing this back to the amendment, the Gillibrand Amendment brings people into the equation, right? It brings the effects of the phenomenon on individuals into the equation. And I feel like that's really important. That's public benefit. Mere flight safety over special use areas, right? That's a really narrow focus. And I don't know that benefits the general public, right? Or serves the public interest. But I think that physical effects, that's at least the tip of the iceberg to get our foot in the door to start talking about, hey, this is something that affects people, right? On an 100%. Individual level. And I think that's really important.
And let me get to this question. And guys in the chat, let me know if Lou comes on Elizondo. Otherwise, you got to stay here. You can't go over to the other show. No, I'm just kidding. I'll probably only go to like 10 more minutes. The proposed focus on health consequences. This is from Third Eye on Stuff. Relates to CE2 cases. Do you think there's a sensitive program monitoring CE3 and 4 cases, which OUSDI wants to protect? I think there are other programs. I'm not sure if it's connected to OUSDI. I don't know. I mean, if that exists, it would be in a unacknowledged special access program. I don't know. You would think, and I talked with Michael Vai about this. He's like, they're studying this. Obviously, other people. It's not just Michael Vai. It's like, obviously they're studying this. Somewhere it's being studied. Why would it would be derelict in their duty if they did not study this? I don't know how in depth it is. I don't know how many people. Is it a handful of scientists? Is it 100? I don't know. Probably not a very large amount. But something else I wanted to get back to what you said. Another thing is, how much is this? When you read the work of Barry Taff, he discusses a lot of poltergeist cases where he believes it's coming from the person. The entity case. I mean, there was an entity that formed right in front of everybody who was there. He's like, we had so many witnesses, and he goes, we could not capture it on film. We had cameras. It just would not show up on film. So either the cameras can't register that, or it's being created in our minds where it's really not there. And also, he thought it was coming. I got to kill this light. He thought it was coming from the person involved and not some entity. So it's like, there's so many possibilities. And it's funny. I think the interview he did with Jeffrey Mishlove was 2020 or 2019. And he brings up a contagious agent with poltergeist activity. So it wasn't just in the Skinwalker's book. And I was surprised. I was surprised that happened. I mean, that he came up with that theory. And I listened to 4 hours of Mishlove with Barry Taff. I don't know if you've ever heard Barry Taff, but he's got a book called UFOs Above, Aliens Below, or Ghosts Above. It's really good. And he talks about how he thinks there's a connection between people who have epilepsy and poltergeist activity. A lot of the folks who had the poltergeist activity in their homes were also epileptic. They were epileptic. So is there some sort of connection to what's going on there? I don't know. But then there are cases where you think, then he's talking about, it's a really good book. I'll have to link to it in the comments. It's and the interviews that Mishlove did with him are really good.
Yeah, link that. I actually haven't heard of him. But
you'll like the book.
I definitely want to check that out. Oh yeah, that sounds really interesting, especially the fact that he got the agent. Yeah, see you later, man. That I definitely am interested in, especially the Mishlove, because he's a really good interviewer. So I'll definitely want to check that out. The poster previously had asked about the CE2 that it talks about a CE2 case. Is there CE3, CE4? I mean, I think that's definitely possible. Like you said, it seems like there's it would be crazy for them not to be studying that in the background. But I would say that just for the sake of getting the bill passed, CE2, right, is in those physical effects. That's something that you can talk about on the Senate floor, right? That's something that you can talk about with other politicians and saying like, hey, this is a big deal. We need to look into this, especially if you can connect it to the troops, right? Like that we have
100%, yeah.
Service members that have, we have veterans that have, and we do, that have suffered ill effects from this phenomenon, and we need to get to the bottom of it to be able to understand it. And, not to get dark, but that also brings into, can we weaponize this, right? We look at it from the health effects part in terms of reducing suffering, but then can we also turn around and cause suffering? I hate to say that, but that, we are talking about the military industrial complex here.
Always
national defense.
Exploit it. Yeah, it really bothers me. So they want to exploit everything.
But that's a foot in the door for us,
right?
That's a foot in the door for us to start talking about experiencers and talking about the things that they go through that they can't even talk about with their family, or even for some of them, their therapist, right? They can't bring it up, and so anything that that moves us in that direction, to me, is beneficial for people in general and in reducing suffering, and I'm all about that. So yeah, I think it is crazy to think that there's no group in the government studying that stuff. I mean, it's sort of like the remote viewing program, right? That it went away when really what probably happened is it went operational, right? That the research part was over, and now it was about, it's really more about the application of what we learned, right? And so, yeah, it's super hard for me to believe that all this stuff is out there. But again, a lot of this is about sharing with the public, right? And that might be a clue as to why it's, there are people in USDI and other areas that are pumping the brakes because they already know, or at least some of them might know, that we already have programs that are looking into this stuff, right? And so this is just a song and dance for the public. Why do we need that when we're already doing that back here? No one needs to know about that. But that doesn't benefit you and me, right? That doesn't benefit us at all if it just stays locked up and hidden and it never comes out. I personally am of the opinion I would rather have a controlled disclosure where I get some information than no information. That's just me. I know other people disagree. They're like, no, I want everything, 100% give it to me now. I don't care what happens to people's careers or their pensions or whatever. Throw everybody in jail and give me all the answers now. I just don't think it's not going to happen. So for me, I'm willing to totally play ball with people who are like, yeah, we'll give you some information. I'll take what I can get. That's just me personally.
No, I agree. I agree. And
granted, I'm 33, so it might be different for me than somebody who's,
like
in their
somebody
70s or 80s
like
and been working
me,
on this.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you. Yeah, exactly. An old like you with your dot matrix printer.
Hey, I had a cassette. My first computer had a cassette loading up programs. So yeah, it was a long time ago.
Wow.
We used to have like 10 hours. We had CompuServe, and we can get online. It was like one bulletin board where you can leave messages for people. It was the very beginning. Yeah, in the 80s. This was like the 80s. There was kind of like an internet. But I agree. I want to see it private. I don't want to see this in government hands, only because then we can control the data. But right now we're getting this. I'm not going to complain if we get this. Right. And once like you said, if we get an F-18 pilot saying I had an injury, and then they say privately, I'll tell you more, because NAP has mentioned that how there are people connected to the Tic Tac and other stories where they have close encounters, and they have all of the other weird stuff happen too. But they're not going to talk about it because they're still active, they're still flying. There's no way. Even if somebody says like, you can talk about it, you're not going to lose your flight. Okay, well, last night I looked out my window and I saw this wolf that looked like a human, and then they walked away and then they carved up the tree. It's like, you're not flying again. There's no way they're going to talk. And that's the extreme story, obviously. But
Yeah.
even
Even the
orbs,
UFO community doesn't take you seriously, which is,
no,
I
no,
mean, we're the UFO community. If it doesn't fly with us, how's it going to fly with, the
right.
people who
And
are supposed
there
to
are
be
minor, there are
piloting
less,
these $1 million?
there are less crazy stories like the guy in, I think it was Georgia, where he came out and he saw a black triangle up in the woods outside, like 500 feet up. He takes his flashlight, and right before he hits it with his flashlight, a beam comes down and he gets injured. So it's like, even that,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
even that's hard for people
Yeah.
to take.
Yeah.
And by the way,
Yeah.
I am not a young gun. I was labeled a young gun by Grant Cameron, but that was before he knew that I was an old antique gun.
Yeah. You're a, what's the pill? This is topical because it's almost Thanksgiving, right? You're a blunderbuss.
Oh,
You're
when I
not a
worked on
young gun.
Pawn
You're like
Stars,
an old gun.
I never heard of a blunderbuss. I worked on Pawn Stars, and we went out. They bought a blunderbuss, and we shot off a blunderbuss, and it was great. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Blunderbuss
great.
is like definitely the most comical of all weaponry. I would have to say. But anyway, I'm gonna jet, man. It's been great
Okay.
talking to you, and
Yeah, thank you. Thanks
sorry
for
about
being
my
here. It helped
lighting
a
and
lot.
looking extra creepy. Right, I'm
Nope,
at
it's
home,
good.
so I'm just kind of
It's
makeshift.
very Skinwalker at the Pentagon-ish.
Oh yeah. There's
Have a great
dino beavers
Thanksgiving,
everywhere
and
in here.
thanks
You
for
have no
being
idea.
here.
Yeah. Hey, you too. All right. Talk
Take
to
it
you later.
easy. All right, Omega. Bye. Thank you, Quinn. Quinn the Q. I got to ask you a question. Hold on. What one? You want disclosure? We're not alone on this planet. The craft we've seen for thousands of years are piloted by several advanced species that live in our oceans. It's funny in the Gillibrand Amendment. They talk about NOAA, so the National Oceanic. I'm going to say it wrong. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They are part of the Gillibrand administration. So that was another thing I didn't expect to see. So, but you have transmedium craft they're looking into, so that makes sense. And let me get to this question, if there is a question. If it would move the subject forward, I'd be okay with immunity for people in the government hiding information. Your thoughts? I've discussed this before. So, and give me 1 second. I got to get a drink. And it's only iced tea because people always ask me what I'm drinking during these shows, and I never want to interrupt the guests to tell people what I'm drinking. Hold on. And I'm afraid where the dog is because he's doing something bad. All right, so, Nicole, happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for that. Let me get to this. Immunity. I am okay with immunity in the government for the people who have kept the secrets. No problem. If it's just about secrets, I 100% agree. Give them immunity if it's going to give us the information. And this is something I've talked about with Nicole, if there are people who have been injured or threatened or killed for the secret, no, I don't want immunity on that. But we don't know if that's happened. It's been rumored in their stories. There's Forrestal supposedly is pushed out the window. Some people say he committed suicide. There are other cases where people supposedly were intimidated, and Lou has spoken about that. There's like a quasi men in black type group. So that kind of stuff, if violence is involved, I don't support amnesty. If it's just keeping secrets, no matter how big the secret is, I support amnesty. I mean, the story's too big for us to hold grudges over people who kept the secrets for whatever reason. And in their minds, they may believe that they were doing something for national security because of technology, or they thought it would end. I spoke to a guy who's in the Wilson Davis documents. He told me, he said, why would we want to make this public? You would ruin religion. You would ruin society. So that's the mentality of a lot of people. He had access to a lot of the stuff. He would not let me use his name, this guy who was in the Wilson Davis documents. If I had given out all of the details he shared with me, you would have been able to figure out who he was. He's just an older guy. I don't think he realized the details he was giving me made it obvious who he was. And I need to call him back and see if he's changed his mind at all. Probably not. Something I will share that I have since people joined me for Thanksgiving Eve. When I interviewed George Knapp and Colin Kelleher, they told me for the first time that I didn't know this, and maybe I missed it, but James Lukatsky had his own poltergeist hitchhikers type stuff happen. I'd never heard that before. So when they said that, I was like, I tried to get details, but they would not share. And Nicole, I do not have a pilgrim's hat unless you're asking somebody else. but I do have a backwards hat. And happy Thanksgiving to you too. Thank you for that. Any other questions, folks? Yeah, UFO amnesty to a point. But that's not up to me. It's not up to us. I think we'd have to vote on it. I don't know how you do that. Put an amendment out. We all vote. Should we give amnesty to people who are in special access programs? If you pull all of the hairs out of Eric Davis, I still don't think he'll tell you everything. But that brings up a point yesterday. People get mad at him, and then Gary Nolan chimed in, and Gary and Eric are very close. So Gary's like, Eric knows what he can share. He knows what he can share, and he goes right up to that point. He goes right up to it. Nobody else talks about the Crash Retrieval program. And then somebody said, well, Eric knows how much he can share, and he knows that they kind of need him because he has information that other people don't have. And I have heard that from other people. I just know he has so much information. And for me, when I see people questioning whether or not he really briefed the committees, and then we had Mellon backing it up. He did. He briefed them. What exactly he told them, I don't know. I just know they paid attention from what I heard. Very, very close attention. And if there is some Astro office that comes online, I would love if Eric Davis got a job there, because then maybe he could actually do interviews and I could interview him here, because right now his job will not let him interview on this subject. And as far as I know, there's nothing nefarious there. It's related to last year, the New York Times article. He gave quotes, their name was mentioned. So it's really nothing to, it's frustrating, because I know if he was able to speak right now, what he would be saying. I mean, you've seen some of his comments I shared on Twitter. And so he's not one to hold his tongue. And Gary Nolan said yesterday, he used to not be as trying to think of a word. Outspoken is not the word. I think he's always been outspoken. He and I have disagreed on stuff privately. We've had many fights. I mean, our first disagreement was on Lazar, when I was like, let's check out the documentary. And he was like, there's no need to check out a Lazar documentary. We already know the answer. I was like, nope, that's not how it works. You got to watch the documentary first, then you can critique it. What's this? I'm starting not to like the idea of amnesty. Hear me out. Only because of the lives they messed up. Yeah, that's another problem of Americans trying to get help, get the word out to others that are not alone. So we need to find out, were people's lives really messed up? I know we've heard stories, but if true, like James Letkatsky, who worked, he ran the OSAP program. According to Lou in that article on Medium, they ruined his career. And if that's true, I mean, Lewis mentioned this could be a lot of lawsuits. Also at crash retrievals, if one company was given a craft and they developed technology out of that, that company had a big advantage and other companies missed out. And that's a lot of money they missed out on if they weren't able to, have the same access to the same technology. So where do we draw the line? Do we want, people's lives messed up? If you can prove a connection, I agree. Amnesty that's up to the people. That's up to the families. That's not up for me to decide. But just plain secret keepers who worked in these programs, hell yeah. If we can get somebody who worked on the crash retrieval program to come out and talk about it, or somebody who ran the program, I'm all for secrecy. Like I said, as long as people weren't injured. So I'm going to go, since it's Thanksgiving Eve, and you guys can go watch. I don't know if they're going to have Lou on another show, but I know somebody said here that Lou had been taking a break for a while. 21 people are watching. That's fine. I'm happy. It's Thanksgiving Eve. I didn't expect anybody. I just wanted to do something on Gillibrand, and my interview with Knapp and Kelleher is 90 minutes. I don't know if I broke any new ground, but one thing I focused a little bit on was the Department of Homeland Security and the briefing that Lekatsky gave to them. I think it was 2011, and he let loose. If you read the book, he let loose with everything that had happened in the program. And a lot of it, if you read the book, a lot of it is hard to believe, but he let loose. And I'm trying to see if I did answer that. So that I brought up. Lekatsky, I wish he would do more interviews. Hopefully 60 Minutes gets to talk to him, but I don't think they have enough. I don't think they will. I mean, the first thing he's going to say, well, I went to Skinwalker Ranch after reading Hunt for the Skinwalker, and I saw a 18-inch yellow twisting thing that looked like spaghetti, and then it just disappeared. So I don't know how you start out with that. Heidi, non-disclosure agreements will hold up progress as always. Not sure how any of us get around them. Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be up to, if they have hearings, and if the hearings are private, they'll have to work out something where certain information needs to be let out, and they need to be let out of those NDAs. Otherwise, we'll be stuck here for a while. And like, once again, I am not content with what we have. I am not content. We know people in the government, and it might be a small amount of people. They know more. We just got to find out how we can get those people, if they want to share the information. I think some of them do want to share the information. Stuff I've heard behind the scenes is things are changing, but whether or not it makes it out to us, I don't know. Several in government signed a treaty that allows some species to kidnap subjects. We've heard that in our national parks and forests in exchange for tech. In national parks, you would be talking about Missing 411 and the work of, I forget his name, Missing 411. I don't know if any of that is true. I don't know what's going on with people, but those cases are really interesting and they're really hard to explain. People just disappear in thin air. It seems like out of thin air. So, people go missing. Who knows if that's related to the phenomenon at all? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. There could be so many different aspects of what's visiting. I've heard different stuff from different people. Usually it's real basic, but then you'll get somebody saying, well, it's this, we got ETs, interdimensionals, time travelers, Bigfoot, all of it. I don't know. It's really hard to figure out what's going on. Thanks, Star. Let's see if I missed anything. Yeah, I think Lou said we do know where to look. It's the question of and Corbell and Eric Davis have talked about a data warehouse. So yeah, the question is, David Paulides, thank you, Star. It's a matter of, can we get access, and who has access? Secretary of Defense, President. If we send the Secretary of, the one thing I liked about Gillibrand saying, thanks, Will, you have a great night too. Everybody have Thanksgiving. I'm going to go. But one thing Gillibrand said is, she goes, oversight. She mentions oversight. If she's been convinced that there are programs or there's data that nobody has oversight over, she's as a member of the Senate, that's not acceptable. So if she believes that could really push her towards pushing for more openness. The first step is getting them access and getting them to have the oversight. The second step is letting the American people know, because most of this stuff should not be classified as far as national security, unless you think the truth is going to destroy this. You destroy the world, but that's the whole world. I don't know. I don't know what the truth is, so I can't make that judgment. What's the question? I want to know how long the NDA is for. Yeah, I don't know. I am not an NDA specialist. I know Rick Doherty, controversial as he is, he talks about certain things he was told, but his NDA ran out. So I don't know. And we need one amazing video, as amazing as Tic Tac, Go Fast, and Gimbal were when they came out. That's not going to convince the public. That interests the public, but that's not going to convince the public that this technology is, beyond next generation. Especially since people can make arguments that these are just drones or the gimbal is not turning. And then we have the Jeremy Corbell videos, with Christopher Mellon spoke about in his article. I do think there's more to that story. We just haven't heard it yet. I don't think it's Chinese drones. Always keep an open mind, but I don't think the people I've spoken to, I don't think they're all lying to me. Is it possible sources lie to me? Yes, of course. Have I had a source lie to me? I've had a source give me information that I thought was very shaky, which turned out to be half true. So it's like, you wonder why that was given to me. And for me, I looked at it, even when I first saw it, I was like, this doesn't make sense, but whatever. All right, I'm going to go. Thanks for being here, guys. I know it's a holiday eve, and I appreciate it. And thank you for the super chats. I know it was Nicole and somebody else, and I don't have it. It doesn't show me where the super chats came from, but I will link to the Barry Taff, Dr. Barry Taff, great paranormal investigator, PhD. He worked in the UCLA lab back in the 70s. The only thing about Barry Taff, I'll link to his interviews too. Every time he tells a story that involves a female, and you will see this, he describes them physically as if they're Hollywood stars. He's like, So back in 1975, I met Lana. Lana was a 6-foot tall blonde, looked just like Marilyn Monroe. Every description you'll start saying, it's like, all right, already, come on, Barry. But he's got so much information, and it connects to UFOs. A lot of the poltergeist activity connects to UFOs, I think, which I've battled with Grant Cameron about consciousness and Skinwalker Ranch and how negative attitudes may affect it. But if you listen to Barry Taft, you definitely will see a connection between consciousness and what people are experiencing. Whether or not their negative attitude has something to do with it, I don't know. I'll go through the rest of these. You don't have to wait for the government to disclose. It's been going on since Roswell. Well, Trinity, if you believe the case with Jacques Vallée and Paula Harris from 1945, and maybe even the 30s, there's a case that Lou has spoken about with Mussolini. Use critical thinking, logic, deductive reasoning, common sense, and Occam's razor. Well, check out the videos I posted of people being asked questions on the street yesterday, and it does not give you hope that people will figure this out on their own. We need something amazing, something that's just irrefutable, like Lou has spoken about, the 23-minute video. Yes, who has access? Who is it that has that access? Is it softening up like I suspect? Maybe, because I've heard some stuff. I'm not sure. So anyway, all right, I'm going to go. Thanks, guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for being here. And I'm working on transcripts related to everything that Knapp and Kelleher did and Lutkatsky, and then my own transcript, which I really don't want to do, but I should. And then a review of the book, which is really long. And that's why it's been delayed. So, and also I did something on Mystery Wire with a few other folks that I think should be up soon. I'm not sure. There may be a delay with that. Anyway, have a great night, everybody. Thanks. Talk to you next time.